Good morning. Welcome to another Gimbal update. I trust your day is a good one. I trust that you are just living a great life today. I have given you guys a whole bunch of disclaimers here that nothing that we put on these broadcasts is guaranteed. There is risk with everything you do. There is risk in going out to the eclipse next week. It's going to be this coming Monday in central Indiana. I don't know if you got your fancy glasses yet. I got mine, but don't look directly into the sun. That's not a good plan. Phil sent me a update earlier today that the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and Purdue University are working together and going to have a kind of extravaganza out at the racetrack. If you've got nowhere to go to watch the eclipse, that's a good place to keep in mind and consider doing that. I'm probably going to watch it from my home front. That we've decided at Gimbal, due to the crowds that the local police are expecting, to work remotely on Monday and encourage that as you all call, we'll be available. We'll just not be working from the Gimbal World headquarters on Monday, but it should be a spectacular event. Been 819 years since an eclipse came through central Indianapolis, Indiana, or specifically Indianapolis, and it's going to be another 129 years before you can watch it again right here. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said that he thought that the eclipse was a very special thing, and as we were talking about it, it made sense to me that the more that we as individuals look at these things, the more we miss out on the grandeur of creation. And there's just huge things that go on in a day that we can really captivate our imagination with creation itself. And this is one of the bigger ones. Excuse me a second. I had a friend asked me last week about sabbaticals, and I thought I would just give you all a thought about sabbaticals. And it's been 2006 when I took my first sabbatical, and um, I just found it to be a productive use of time. And as people are trying to find what it is they're about in life, it can be really challenging, I think. And if you get in a role in life and that role begins to take root and your velocity of life picks up, sometimes you can get stuck in places that maybe you never intended to be. And so I just thought I'd go over the idea of a sabbatical and how that fits, I think, into a financial plan in a spectacular way. And so the sabbatical was 2006 was the first one I took, and it was a critical thing for me because I had been going at such a velocity in my career and didn't really know how to redirect my thoughts, redirect my energies, and figure out, what is it I want to be doing in the next 5, 10, or 20 years. And so the sabbatical, I kind of described it as life begins on the off ramp. And so we opted as a family, as I was taking about 100 days off, to spend about 30 of those days in an RV. And we had 5 small kids at the time, and I had never driven an RV. Consequently, it was going to be an adventure. And I mentioned to you all in the past that, like, from all the years that I've helped families with their finances, and I've boiled down what I think top 5 principles that people might ought to consider. The first was to think differently. Second is to buy wisdom, then to like what you do, live adventurously, and then generosity wins. And that's the kind of the premise of the outline I put together for you here. And really how those things influenced me during my sabbatical. What happens, I think, is as you are working in a career, you can really wear yourself down, wear yourself out. The expectations continuously increase on what you're doing. And so the idea of learning to pace yourself can be really challenging. I found for me personally that the time between 35 and 45 were some of the most challenging times of my life. I was learning my skill set at a level that was making me competitive. I was having success in business, had a young family with all those eyes looking at me. I had parents who were aging. There were just a lot of demands on my time. And to be able to manage life effectively, I needed to learn to pace myself. And that's what the first sabbatical did for me. It just helped me to slow down, reevaluate. My friend Bob Warren said he had a constant prayer for me that I would be able to sort through the excellent things and say yes to those and no to the good things. And so that process, when I kind of walked away from the office in June of '06, it allowed me to kind of think through what all was important to me. I put together a journal that I, wrote ideas and observations during that time that's really been helpful for me. And one of the ideas I saw in there is when you run fast for a long time, you don't tend to think so well. That when you're in reactionary mode, you're pressing the accelerator in life down, it's just really hard to think well about what all is important in your world. And so I don't know if all of you who are with me today, like if a sabbatical is something that makes sense for where you're in life, but if you know folks that are accelerating pretty quickly in life and doing things and trying to manage it, just feel free to refer them my way. I can help them out. One of the questions I saw about thinking differently in there was if money wasn't a limiter, what would you do with your time? And that was a big deal because coming out of college, a lot of times I think people think they want the job with the highest pay, when in fact that may not be the motivator that really motivates people for the long haul. And I was able to kind of think through that. I was able to talk to people about what are the motivators for them. And then even in that same process, as I'm thinking differently, what is it that I define as success for me? Because you could literally, friends of mine had said, what if you climb the ladder of success and you get to the top and you look out and find out you put it on the wrong building. And so slowing down in life and figuring out what success looks like for you is kind of a big deal. And anything you can do to help others find success is I think critical along the way. I saw this sign while we were on Route 66. That was the RV trip we took, was on Route 66. And um, it kind of reminded me of the idea that sometimes finding success can be arrows to a lot of different places. And I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to jump on Route 66. It is a adventure in and of itself. If you've never done it, you can do a test tube version of it. You can jump on it in downtown Chicago, follow it out of Chicago all the way to St. Louis, and then back to central Indiana. And it's worth the adventure. It's a good 3 or 4 day journey if you take your time. But sometimes you just can't find the old highway. It's just almost impossible to find. And that's the same thing I think for people who are sometimes trying to define success. They may need the experience of some of you that are on the phone or on this call to help diagnose and point them in the right direction so that they can think through what really is critical in their lives. The second principle that has been important to me over the years is to buy wisdom. And I was looking through some of the people that I met, spent time with on that sabbatical, and one of them was a friend named Brian Hour. I had befriended him on the sabbatical. I was walking from our house to the Hardee's and Fisher's, and I kept seeing this man studying his investment paper, and every day I would have conversations with him. And long story short, Brian Hour was probably one of the smartest men I could ever find about the markets. And he was right there at Fisher's sitting at the Hardee's. And he didn't charge me for his wisdom. He offered it to me just for my time hanging out with him. And it was a real gift to me. Brian's in his mid-80s these days and just still a treasure of wisdom. Along the way, we came across couple families, the Silvas and the Silveras, Manuel Silvera and Roger Silva. They were they were on our RV trip. They were basically on the same journey as we were. They were heading back to California, and we were heading towards California on Route 66. And we ran into them in several different places. And what they helped me to think differently about was kindness and generosity. And they really offered some good wisdom in that. They were a couple Portuguese families, and they ended up throwing a big party for us once we got all the way out to the West Coast. There was a businessman named Don Wood who had been tempted to retire at 65 that I had a chance to interview while I was on this trip. And he said something that just kept banging in my head. And he said that he opted to not retire at 65. And he said it because, excuse me, he said, nobody cares what you used to be. And I've just had a passion of helping young men find their purpose and their energy in life. And it encouraged me to just keep working so that I could still have that connectedness to the workforce. And so Don really offered some good wisdom. And then another sweet friend of mine who's subsequently passed away, I guess a lot of these people have, was Ellie Jenkins. And Doug and I had gone out to Washington, D.C. to explore some ideas, meet with some people, and Ellie had allowed us to stay at her and her husband's house. And I woke up and I was like, man, that was a good night's sleep. And Ellie told me, she said, yeah, we just believe that our guest room needs to have the best mattress in the house so that our guests feel welcome. And I just thought, what a profound idea to let somebody know that they're important. And so there were a number of people, by taking some time away from the office, that taught me all kinds of things about wisdom and life and a better way of living. And Connie and I ended up taking another sabbatical in 2014. It was basically as our kids were starting to channel out of the house, we thought it made sense to do something again where I took the summer off. And on that particular summer, we did a trip to Alaska, and we're in Alaska for probably 30 days. And again, it recharged my energy, recharged my thought process, taught me a lot about life and about people. And one of the things that you kind of in the next idea of like what you do, what I really discovered was the velocity of life can sometimes mislead your thoughts. Like if you're just pressing the gas so hard and you don't have time to step back at your career or business and think about things, you can just keep going down the same path, and it may not be the best place for you to be. It may not be the best place for if you're in the investment business for your clients, if you haven't stepped back and thought about it. What are you doing? What are the strategies you're doing? How are you adding value for families in what you do? And so getting away long enough to step back and think about it re-energized me for another decade or so. And it really stirred my soul to help others more and more as I was on the road and had time to walk around. The other thing that getting away from the office did, it helped me to think through what aspects of the role I don't like to do, and to think, how can we get those aspects done? Do we contract those out? Do I assign them to other people within our team? And if I had kept going at that same velocity, I don't know that I'd still be able to do what I'm doing right now. And I've come to believe that we have an amazing power right here to reframe whatever is going on in our lives and position ourselves for great days ahead. And so learning to like what you do in spite of whatever ups and downs may be going on there is really critical of how you frame today's activities. We went on in June of 2006 is when that happened. The worst bear market in the NASDAQ in many, many years was from March of 2000 through most of 2003, and the NASDAQ dropped 75 to 80%. So that was a wearing market right there. A couple of years later, I'm on the sabbatical. A couple of years after the sabbatical, we hit another bear market that just brutalized the markets. And so being able to lower your stress a little bit, think about what you're doing, can bring great value to a lot of people. And I was really grateful that you all allowed me that freedom back all those years ago to do that. The other principle of kind of managing your resources wisely is to live adventurously. And when I stepped foot in that RV, I had never driven anything big like that before. We pulled out with 5 little kids and Connie and I in the RV and pointed it towards downtown Chicago. We get to Chicago, it's raining, rush hour, about the worst case scenario of what you could do. We're living adventurously. Connie's probably wanting to take me out, wondering what in the world I've got her involved with. But it stretched my thought process. It stretched my skill set. It stretched every component. And it had my entire family there watching and saying, what's Dad going to do? What's Keith going to do in this situation? And in our culture today, I don't think much of that's going on anymore. I think people are being taught to live safely, avoid risk, and just getting more and more narrow in their living. And I think it's important for leaders to lead in a way that points out that adventure is really a big component of life. I saw a number of quotes along the way, and one of them was, "We all arrive safely at death," and so to let fear of things cause you to avoid living more fully seems silly to me. Another quote said that all people live. All people die, but not all people live. And so the process of life can really be more than you could imagine. I think in any season of life, there can be adventure. And I was visiting my uncle at an assisted living yesterday, and even where he's at, if he reframes situations, he can have an adventure in that facility by just reframing his thoughts. I'd say that the takeaway from that trip as a subset of our whole sabbatical was that it's about the journey and not the destination. And one of the things I've learned along the way is that when things go really badly, there's a temptation to allow those things to discourage you from living adventurously again. And what I incorporated in the thought process is when things go badly, my experience has been those bad things are great lessons learned. They're motivators to keep plugging ahead. They're also funny stories that you can tell people. And I show you some of those. What I started doing was taking selfies of when things went badly on great adventures. I called this Burma shave because Burma shave on Route 66 slowed things down so you could read them and pay attention. And sometimes when things are going not according to plan, there's some great lessons to be learned there. Recently, I had a pipe burst in my uncle's house that I had to kind of spearhead a project there. And in the place, the bed and breakfast we stayed had a sign, welcomed Uncle Bill's crew as we were down there cleaning up the mess. I was visiting my daughter recently and is in a full flight, and the man in front of me on the flight just plopped into a seat, threw his seat back all the way on top of where I'd be sitting. And fortunately, I was standing up when he did that and didn't just crack my knees. But I took a selfie just to enjoy and laugh at the moment because things happen, they're out of your control. You can have a bad attitude about it, or you can slow down and make the most of it. We try to figure out where this one was. Oh, I did something here. I can't tell what I did. Oh, this is, we took our family on a cruise at Christmas, and this was the rental car. What I had done was I had taken 2 specific trips to the port, dropped off 90% of the luggage, and then maybe an hour and a half before we were setting sail, discovered I dropped off all the luggage at the wrong port. And so that was me taking a selfie and realizing that, hey, this could be a story. It's not really pleasant right now. It's going to be another story. And then over here, there's a group of folks that we were at the salt flats, the Bonneville salt flats, taking some videos and some pictures out here. It looks like it's snow, but it's just all salt out there. And in fact, I forgot to put the brakes on the RV, and it took off rolling almost into the salt flat. And so I would guess most of us have had those kind of experiences where we've had bad things happen, and without reframing those, it would cause us maybe to avoid those kind of adventurous living things. And some of those adventure things might be in the ordinary day to day, like cleaning my uncle's house, or I know with my mom when she got sick, there were things that went on there that didn't seem like an adventure, but we were able to reframe them and make them into an adventure. Finally, I'd say generosity wins. And one of the aspects we did was early on, we would do trips. We made gifts to give people who helped us along the way. And these were some kind of cool pins we had made that said "Thanks for the kicks," and it has the Route 66 on there. And so what it allowed us to do to think differently was to keep our eyes open for people who are helping us along the way. And you don't necessarily have to give somebody something to be generous to them, a thank you or God bless you or whatever your way of acknowledging the importance of somebody. It can be some generosity from your soul to another. Um, there was a homeless man in Needles, California. The RV was malfunctioning, and he asked me if I'd buy him a sandwich, and I was really distraught about the RV not working very well. And when I think about him, his name was Don, and I don't know that he probably made it past the summer that we were there, but his kindness to me and his generosity. I bought him a sandwich, and I was looking beyond him before I spent time talking with him. And then finally, when I had kind of taken myself and just given him my attention, we just had a conversation, and I was honest with him. I said, "Hey, I'm going to drive this RV through the desert more, and I'm anxious." Um, and what I was saying was I felt kind of weird that here's a man that had a place to live. I'm in a rented $135,000 RV, and I'm anxious. Just the paradox of that was funny. I just kind of offered that insight to the man, and he said, "Let me pray for you." And so as my family were coming out of the Jack in the Box where we were, here their dad and husband is holding hands with the homeless guy who's praying over me that I could get this $135,000 RV across the desert. The people I mentioned to you, the Portuguese people, they were generous to us. They threw a party for us at their house once we got to California. They introduced us to Santa Maria tri-tip steak. They filled our freezer full of strawberries. They had a swimming pool, and the kids all swam and just did an amazing things there. Before we left, my uncle gave us a stack of $2 bills for the kids to have money to spend at the different stops along the way. And his generosity with something little as $2 bills was a big deal. But in general, we found that people along the way were very generous. The news or the world system or whatever will make you think that generosity is a thing of the past, but I don't think that's true. I think you'll find generosity is flowing freely out there. I thought I'd share a couple pictures here for you. This is uh, this is my daughter Casey. She got married last year, so she looks a little different than that. She's still got that look in her eye as a mid-20-something-year-old, but the Silveras owned this strawberry ranch, and we were out picking the strawberries to fill the refrigerator with, and that was just a beautiful sight there. And we ran into the Silveras and the Silvas on the road at 3 or 4 different places, and finally at their house in Santa Maria. And this is in the Grand Canyon. We ran into them, and this is my daughter Kelly, and this is my daughter Kristen. By the way, she got engaged over the weekend, which was pretty exciting for us. But these two families just taught us a lot along the way. And had I not taken the time to unplug from life, I probably wouldn't know a lot of the lessons I learned. I like grilling, and here's Roger and Manuel with this massive grill that you can tell they celebrate people with a grill of the magnitude of that. And again, the takeaway from the trip itself was it's all about the journey and not the destination. And sometimes in financial planning, we get it kind of mixed up. We get focused on financial destinations rather than life itself. And I know what we want to encourage you as friends and clients is to live life to the fullest as you can, because you only get one shot at it, and it's a big deal. Let me shift now. I've talked a lot about sabbaticals and things. If you know anybody that needs a break and is thinking about something like that, have them reach out to me. I'm happy to encourage them to take the risk of something like a sabbatical and just help them to think better about their futures. I'm going to give you an update real quick on the markets here before I run out of time. And one of the things we've talked about in recent weeks has been the volatility that's in the market. And and the volatility is used by the VIX index. Let me pull it up real quick. So the VIX is this is a chart, the daily chart of it, and normally anything below 20 right here is a relatively good time to be in the market. So if this is trading below this level, it makes it a lot easier to be in the market. You just don't have the volatility that'll shake you out and have your monthly statements show big swings in the value. And you can see I drew a couple gray lines in here to show you the range for which it's been trading of late. And it's stayed well below that 20, but we've noticed in the last few days that it's kind of breaking out of that range, meaning there's more volatility in the market. I saw the idea that Israel was making some pretty strong comments about Iran yesterday that caused a sell-off in the market. Also, a lot of the experts out there thought that we'd have a rate decrease by March of this year, and it hadn't happened. And some people think it may not even happen this year. And so we may see a lot of volatility as we're heading towards the election. But in the meantime, I wouldn't put too much brain time worrying about that. We are watching those things for you, so you don't have to put a lot of brain time on it. Here's the NASDAQ. It bottomed out back in October and has had just a really big run here. And I drew again some gray lines here to put a channel of where it's been bouncing around. And just yesterday it dropped on the out of the bottom of that, and that'll create some kind of extra eyes for us to be watching that in the next few days to see what happens in that area. We'd like to see it hit this red line here. That's the 50-day moving average, and bounce upward out of there. But time will tell. We'll give it over the weekend and see what happens. But the NASDAQ is plodding along nicely. The S&P 500, it's got very similar channel lines where it had hit a peak back in July, August last year, sold off quite a bit, and then rallied back up to that level. And then subsequently, since November, we've had a good rally in the S&P 500. And then one other area where we've been really hopeful that things would pick up, and you can see as I've shown you these three different sectors of the marketplace, that two of them look very similar. This is the S&P 600 index. It's small cap, small companies. And you can see that it has not had an upward bias trend like the other two have. And we've been getting more optimistic that maybe this thing is starting to flatten out and getting ready to take off again. But again, it'll just take time to discover whether the small companies are going to take off or not. We're hopeful they will, because we think that is optimistic for not only your accounts, but for the economy going forward. That's all I got for you today. I appreciate you all hanging out. I hope that maybe somebody can benefit from the ideas of a sabbatical, and they're comfortable calling me. In the meantime, you guys enjoy the eclipse. My friend sent me a token with the eclipse here on it, and I encourage you to have fun next week when the eclipse shoots through central Indiana. Take care.